Hi, Wires. It is Wednesday morning and it is Remembrance Day. And I'm in my workout gear here still, and I'm going to take it a little easy today. And 11 o'clock this morning, we'll have a moment with the kids for Remembrance Day. And I just thought today was a good day to talk about one of the most powerful icons in the world. And that icon is, of course, the symbol of Remembrance Day, the red poppy. And what I was hoping to do today was to talk to you a little bit about how this icon came to be, the significance of this icon and the power that it has, both the originally intended power and some new power, both good and bad, depending on your perspective, that this poppy now has today. And I would like to finish off with just a few thoughts on how to create a powerful icon for your brand. So I'm not going to go into great depth about politics or the military, but I do believe that today is a very, very unique, powerful moment in time. And it happens to be a day with an incredibly powerful brand icon. And so I thought it might be helpful for all of us, brand DIYers, entrepreneurs, founders, to talk just a little bit about the poppy. So I'm not sure if any of you know the poem In Flanders Fields, but I remember as a schoolboy hearing it every Remembrance Day, and we used to recite the poem, and I'll never forget the first two lines. In Flanders fields, the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row. I've got the whole poem here that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. Now that is incredibly powerful storytelling. You introduce the imagery of this beautiful flower blowing in the wind between crosses. So right away you have a sense that it's not beautiful, that it's actually fairly grim. You get the sense that there's birds flying in the air, but you can't hear the birds because there's the battle going on underneath. So it paints an incredibly powerful picture. And the poem goes on to describe how somebody who is dead describes their life that is now gone and how they're laying in peace and thinking about how vain it would all have been to have been killed in battle if more people don't honor their memory. And this poem was written in 1915 by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, a Canadian from Ontario. And it was written after he had just buried his friend, Alexis Helmer, after the Second Battle of, I'm never sure how to say this, Ypres. I'm sorry if I mutilated the name, Ypres. Ypres. I'm not sure how to say the name, and I don't want to offend anybody. Please don't take offense. Now, legend has it that Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae was not very happy with this poem, and he tossed it away. And in fact, it was other soldiers in his unit that rescued the poem and made sure that he kept it. And it went on to be published in Punch magazine in the UK. It actually was his second to last poem ever written. In 1918, while still in the military, he contracted pneumonia and he died and was buried with full military honors. Now, if you were like me, a schoolboy, you didn't see the political significance or power of the poppy or this poem. To us, it was always a poem of remembrance, that you remember all the people that gave their lives for our freedom. And it also became a symbol for us, something that you would wear, something that you'd buy from the cadets at the grocery store on the days before Remembrance Day, that you could show some support for the veterans, people who had made a terrible sacrifice on our behalf. The poppy went on to become a massive symbol. It became an icon, a stamp. It became a coin. It became something that the military vets and the Legion used as a symbol for themselves. It also became an extremely political symbol. Now, this wasn't entirely unintentional. John McCrae himself, as a soldier of the British Empire, a Canadian, we were part of the British Empire, he believed very strongly in fighting the war on behalf of the British Empire against the Germans. And in Canada, that was everything but a common perspective. Out west, there were a lot of people who came from different countries who had immigrated who did not feel that strong connection to the empire. And even more so in Quebec, there were a lot of people who said, we stake our history back to France, a country that was fighting the same war as the UK, however, had a very different perspective, and they did not like the idea of fighting on behalf of the empire. And John McCrae, as legend has it, said that he hoped that his poem, when it became famous, actually helped the empire and did harm to the opposition movement. And he used a term that was a little more colorful than that I'm not going to repeat. Now, the poppy has not lost its political power. And I was very, very interested to see that two things were really bubbling up. First, at Whole Foods today, this year, they have prohibited their employees from wearing the poppy. And I was fascinated by this little tiny plastic icon. Why would they not want their employees to wear this icon that's all about remembrance on the day when you talk about the veterans and the terrible sacrifice? Well, it turns out that the poppy has been annexed or has been seen now as a symbol of Black Lives Matter, which completely floored me. I had no idea that the symbol of the veterans and the terrible sacrifice of fighting in wars had been annexed by Black Lives Matter. And that got me digging even deeper. And what I learned was that this was nothing new. In the UK and Ireland, the poppy has become a symbol of the Northern Irish movement, the separatist movement in Northern Ireland, and the terrible sacrifices that they have made fighting for an independent homeland of Northern Ireland. In fact, it became tied directly to events like Bloody Sunday, the blood red poppy, Bloody Sunday. You can see the connection. Very powerful, very controversial. And today, there is strong debate about the soccer players in like the British League wearing poppies and being mandated to wear poppies because of all the political symbology that comes with that. As well, there is now a debate about, here in North America, TV personalities and TV anchors wearing poppies when they go on the air, and this being mandated by the TV networks. And I never really saw a problem with that until I became more aware of how this wasn't just a symbol, as I had learned as a schoolboy, of remembering people who had made the ultimate sacrifice for us in the wars. So that's the story of the poppy. That's the story of John McCrae. That's the story of how this icon became incredibly politicized. But it has maintained a singular power. I believe it's one of the most powerful icons in the world today. So now let's pull back from that for a second, because I believe that purely from an entrepreneurial perspective, from a graphic design perspective, there is something that we can all learn from the power of the poppy. Now, here's the first thing. The poppy wasn't a contrived or invented symbol. It's not something that McCrae just grabbed and said, hey, I'm going to use a spaceship or, a kitchen fork or something like that, and I'm going to give that a whole new life. It was something that was observed and it was completely honest and authentic. He saw that poppies were growing between the graves of the fallen soldiers in an environment that could probably politely be described as extremely hostile, the mud of France during World War I. So essentially, there were crosses in the mud, and the only thing that would survive was the poppy. And he observed that, and that's how this symbol of grim clinging to life came about. It was an entirely authentic observation. He didn't invent or contrive any of it. Second, the poppy carried enormous emotional weight. And I'm not saying like baggage or anything, it just had a lot of oomph to it. Now, as soon as McCrae started talking about the poppy in Flanders Fields, people who were shattered and read this poem about their young sons and daughters being slaughtered in battle, and this poppy, this flower, blooming almost as a symbol of remembrance of these soldiers that had given their life. That's a very, very heavy thought. That's a very, very powerful thought. So not only was the symbol not contrived, it was entirely legitimate, but it was also connected in a very emotional way to people. And it was a universal symbol where everybody goes, oh my goodness, yeah, that really hits a raw nerve with me. That really touches me. So this symbol had a lot of power right from its inception. Oftentimes, when we think of our brand, we try to come up with what I like to call key visuals, a visual that represents what the brand does best. And the poppy, I believe, is an icon, I guess a logo you could call it, but not really. But it's an icon, but I think it's a key visual. It's a representation of an emotion that the brand of remembrance pulls to the surface. The problem with a lot of key visuals today is that they come from the minds of the founders. And remember, John McCrae, sure, he wrote it down, but it was more that he was an observer of something that was already happening. So what can we learn from this as entrepreneurs? I believe that if you want to create a powerful symbol for your company, for your business, for your service, you have to observe. And my advice to entrepreneurs who want to hope to create a powerful icon for their business is to observe, and more so to ask questions. Core to the Brand DIY philosophy and the first chapter in the Brand DIY book on my website is that before you begin anything with your brand, creating your brand, you go out and you talk to consumers. I love talking to consumers, not doing polls, not doing online search, but doing interviews, eye to eye, or on a Zoom call, as it were, because people will reflect back to you how they feel about what the brand does for them. And this is extremely powerful stuff because it comes from a place of legitimacy and authenticity. They're not being paid to invent a symbol. They're just saying, this symbol makes me feel like a spring, or this brand makes me feel like a spring day, or this brand makes me feel like a superhero. Those are coming from a legitimate, honest place. And all too often as founders and entrepreneurs, we skip right past that and we come up with a symbol or an icon that we think is clever. So I would counsel, if you are thinking about your brand, if you are looking at your logo, if you are looking at an icon that could represent your brand, think back to today. Think back to the poppy. Read the poem in Flanders Fields. See how that makes you feel. And let it go through your head. The power of an icon that conjures up such powerful emotions in people. And then go ask people who you know, people who are your customers, the folks who love you, what imagery it conjures up in their head when they use your brand or when they think of your brand. You might be surprised. It may not be as powerful as a poppy, that's a 1 in a million, but you may find yourself having clarity and being open to a surprise that could do your brand a great deal of good. I hope you all have a good Remembrance Day, and we will see you all tomorrow.